G'day, guys. Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. On this episode, I had an awesome chat with Michael Ostrolenk. He is over in Austin, Texas, and he's very much into self-mastery, human resilience, consciousness, you name it. Michael has had a very unique range of experiences that he has drawn from in coaching and guiding others. We had an awesome chat. We got into some of the things that we've both learnt from martial arts, and it was great chatting to him. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's get into it. One, you've done an enormous amount of different stuff through your life, but it also seems you had an interest in personal growth, personal development pretty early on when you were with a psychologist. Is that correct? Did it always come naturally to you?
Well, so I could probably take it back before this time, but definitely around age 9, I had an amazing therapist. She taught me biofeedback, guided imagery, meditation, got me to the martial arts. So I kind of opened up the whole world of, as you said, kind of personal growth and development and evolution of consciousness and things along those lines. I didn't have the language back then, but I did all the practices.
How much did martial arts inform you at that time as a kid? Is that something you continued, or?
Completely. For the last 40, how old am I? 40-some years.
Oh, wow.
Wide variety of different martial arts. So I've studied different ones. But I would say, and it's a great question because I've literally been thinking about this for the last 48 hours. It's been in my mind how informative and the martial arts have actually been for me. Because I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, Bruce Lee.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, exactly. And like I would train every morning in our basement, and I would watch Enter the Dragon every day. Train.
Dude, similar. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I would say that Stephen K. Hayes, who studied under Masaki Atsumi, the American ninja, was a secondary person that highly influenced me. Although as a kid, I didn't get to go train with him. I read all his books when I was a kid. And actually, I tried to convince my father to send me to Ohio to his training camp. But at age 10 and 11, he wouldn't let me do that. But so I'd say like martial arts have been instrumental. And it's not just physically, great getting in shape. It's not just about learning how to fight and defend yourself or defend others that you care about. But ultimately, for me, it's kind of a spiritual cultivation, which seems to be most important to me over my lifetime.
For sure, man. The Bruce Lee thing, I can relate. Like I just watched Bruce Lee movies over and over as a kid. And the thing about him for me was that it was kind of no frills. Like he was a guy and he was doing all this superhuman stuff. And so it wasn't like watching Superman or something like that. It was watching this guy who just had this phenomenal skill set and an on-screen presence and stuff. And I was like, well, if he's a human, are we all capable of that kind of level? So I think that's what fascinated me to his films. And yeah, I could just relate personally on the martial arts thing because the biggest thing I got from a succession of years I did training in jiu-jitsu was basically about commitment and committing to the move. And exactly like you say, this is something that I started to take into everyday life. Like, how do we commit how do we commit to our choices wholeheartedly? And it was like, the outcome doesn't necessarily happen how you expect or perceive, but if you go in with a whole heart, it's often better, and it always teaches you something.
I love that. I work for Mark Divine at SealFit, and he talks about Kokoro, which is heart-mind integration or an indomitable spirit. It's like, how do you operate from the heart? I don't mean like the physical heart, although that plays a role, but like, the metaphoric heart, the spiritual heart, the soul. And I love that as kind of the driving force as a mental concept, and then as an experience in my life. Very similar. Like, you don't know the outcome. God has plans for you, and you'll find out, at the outcome. But the journey, if you can remain front side focused and committed, as you said, I think it's a great capacity to develop. And unfortunately, I don't see it being developed in a lot of people these days in our culture, here in the States at least.
It's that resilience factor,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
When you put under strain, no matter what circumstance, that's where the growth
Yeah.
can happen. Um, but yeah, so I'm taking I guess along your journey, was there any consistencies in the, because you've done such a range of things? Like, I was a little overwhelmed reading your bio in a good
That's
way.
funny.
No, in a good
Yeah. Yeah.
way,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
because of the sheer level of experiences you've had, and I was wondering how they have, perhaps, well, professionally, how have things sort of informed each other, or has there been consistencies that you've taken from one to the other, or was it like a series of sort of narrowing the path, if that makes sense?
No, actually, it does. I would say there's kind of two answers to that question. One, there's a set, retrospectively, there's a set of principles that have guided all my work, and one of the principles is kind of the curiosity about human nature and how humans operate and what they do, why they do what they do, and then having a vision of what's possible versus what we actually do. And you can look at that because I'm trained as a marriage and family therapist and a coach and stuff. So I work with individuals, I work with couples, I work with groups, and those dynamics are really important because I work with human beings. But if you saw my bio, I also spent 22 or almost 22 years doing national policy here in the States. A lot of national security work, a lot of defense reform, things around civil liberties, transparency in government, a wide variety of different areas that I operated in. And what I was known for, and it's a very similar set of principles, is that I worked really well across the political spectrum. I had my own ideology, but because of my training as a therapist and just who I am as a human being, I was interested in why people believe what they believe, and I can engage people in conversations and bring them together. And one of the things I was hired to do back in those days was to help facilitate retreats where we bring high-level conservatives, libertarians, liberals, progressives together on a particular topic like defense reform. It'd be professionally facilitated. We'd find common ground and we launch campaigns to reform the military, like the audit of the Pentagon as an example, or maybe the F-35 is a waste of taxpayer money, ... Like we don't have to go into the details of it, but so I helped organize about 6 to 8 of these retreats, and they literally launched left-right campaigns as a result of them. So that's one way. So it's the same. In my mind, it's marriage and family writ large. Working with American at the ideological level is no different than working with a family at the ideological level. Everyone has their beliefs and their perspectives, and how do you get them to relate to one another and organize in such a way that you can actually positively affect change, and not just fight and blah blah blah. That's kind of a useless thing. So that's one explanation of kind of principles that guided my work. Then I have another one if it's of interest to
I
you.
was just going to say, yeah, for sure. I was just going to say the common ground thing. It's so important. It's fascinating that regardless of the dynamic, whether it's heavy politics or a couple, finding that common ground. And I think these days, a lot of what's missing is this ability to find a discourse. It's so healthy to have opposing views and be able to talk about that in a healthy way, but it kind of seems to be missing at the moment. So how were you able to find common ground? Maybe in regard to couples, if a couple's really they're in a kind of standoff position, how do you get back to that common ground?
That's a great question. And the way I start that is by changing their state. You're like, what? So, for instance, when I start working with a couple, no matter what the issue they're working on or the challenges they face, there's an exercise that I have every couple do at the beginning of every session. And I'll walk through the exercise if that's okay with you.
Yeah,
So
please.
I literally have them face each other with consent to put their right hand on their chest. So right hand on the heart so they can feel the heartbeat. And then I had them look in each other's eyes. And I had them remember why they got together in the first place. And I had them do that for 4 to 5 minutes. And it's really a fascinating experience because the breathing gets synced because they start breathing together. Because of the hand touch on the heart, they literally can feel the energetics of the heart and the body start relaxing, so remembering the positive things that brought them together. You'll see the facial expression start shifting, some will remember some funny things. Others start just remembering some really deeply felt joy, but from a sad point of view, when they start crying, oh my God, that's such a memorable moment. They're crying. So just in that 5 minutes period of time, there's a deep connection. There's a state change. There's a heart opening. There's a good remembering. And they're much more capable of that moment to engage in whatever the issues are because their whole human system is open to those possibilities. it might take more than 5 minutes. It's not, it's not a panacea, but like, my interest is like, how do I help them drop their defenses, like literally their physical defenses in the Reichian sense of the term, heart armor, and the contractions against feeling certain things and expressing their feelings and fears, whatever drives them in terms of their relationship with the other person. And it just seems like just that exercise in and of itself is the beginning of re-regulating their nervous systems and their body-mind systems in such a way that they're more capable of approaching the issue. And then I have other things I do too, but I'll just stop there because that's kind of like my first step with a company.
What an awesome way to get him in the room. Like if you just launched into the kind of heady intellectual stuff and one person's on the back foot, like it, I can imagine, yes, it's just gonna kind of unravel and get into like some uncharted territory that's hard to sort of, but yeah, getting them present like that and trying to just take them back, undo all that kind of noise for a moment and get back to the core of their connection. What an awesome way to like get people present. Yes, really.
And I got to give credit to one of my mentors, Dr. Stuart Savatsky, who I've studied with him for over almost 30 years now. He's the one who taught me that exercise, like literally 25 years ago or something along those lines. And I've used it ever since.
Well, again, it goes back to the martial arts in a way, like, when there's two energies colliding, how do you stay present in that and grounded? And we used to do a lot of exercises in getting grounded first. And when we were grounded, we were far more kind of maybe not, call it effective, but it was just, there was more, call it flow in the sequence of whatever we were doing.
And I have to imagine this would be your experience too. Like you're learning to ground in the martial arts, but you're really learning to ground in your life. It expresses itself everywhere, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the hand on the heart center. That just sounds like a very cool place to start. Then you got something to work with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it's amazing because you just watch it and their breathings sync. Like there's a co-regulation that occurs when people come together in that loving space. And it's a great tool, independent of like, let's work on our challenge or a problem, whatever it is. It's a great tool for that. But like, either one of them has a rough day. Why not do that exercise? It's a nice just way to, like I said, co-regulate, get ourselves back in our bodies, into our own experience in the moment, seeing someone that loves you right in front of you. So no matter what happened during your day, you can like kind of recalibrate yourself and prepare for the rest of the day or that night in a different way than I'm stressed out and I'm worked up and I'm burned out or whatever it is.
You could do it at any given time.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it.
It is. Yeah, exactly.
I'm tipping it was a bit different with a room full of politicians, perhaps.
Well, and here's what's fascinating about that. So I had some amazing facilitators that I would bring in. Mark Gerzon from the Mediators Foundation and Bill Urey, who wrote Getting to Yes. He's from Harvard. And those are two of a couple of different people we have facilitate these kind of conversations. And at the beginning, it was never around politics. It wasn't around policy. It was around you. Like they would help us bring people together in didactic or group exercise, just share about life, about people's lives, because it humanizes the other person. Like, oh wait, they have a life just like me, and they're not an evil Republican or evil Democrat or evil Libertarian or whatever. Like, no, that they actually have a full life and they have wants, needs, desires, and challenges just like everyone else. And I thought that was a beautiful way to kind of humanize the political process. And then they transfer, they go from that kind of conversation to why do you believe what you believe? In terms of policy, what does your worldview lead you to become a conservative or a libertarian or progressive or whatever it happens to be, generally speaking, in this particular issue? And that was brilliant because most of us have characterizations of the other person. Oh, he's a knuckle dragging conservative or he's a communist. We just dismiss whatever. And it's like, well, no, you actually you get to understand what drives them to believe what they believe, and like how they think the world would be better if people live this particular way and operate this particular way. You don't have to agree with that, but you can like start to understand, like, wow, they actually have a deep belief in their point of view, and they actually want the world to be a better place. You could disagree with how we get there, but that just kind of reduces the defensiveness of the other sides. And like, okay, now we can start having a conversation. So I know that you're a good person, you're a good human being. you aspire to a similar world that I do, but it might be a little, the means to the ends are slightly differently, or even some of the ends might be slightly differently, but you're a good human being. And that's a great starting point. It's no different than the couples. Like I'm in my heart, I'm relaxed, I'm breathing fully. It's no different. You're getting them into a space where like I'm open-minded, I'm open-hearted, I'm willing to engage in the conversation. And once you're there, then you can start finding the common ground. So there's so much more common ground than we would imagine in the political space or in the policy space.
It's cool that you get into the engine of it. It's like it's perspective, right? It's like you're getting to the core of their engine and where the perspective is coming from, and that just takes away all the judgment, regardless of where they stand. Whereas just seeing things on face value and the judgment, it doesn't allow for any of that. I don't know why it made me think it's perhaps a different topic, but I know it's relative because I don't know if you know Aussie rules football. It's the game we play in Australia. It's a strange
No,
game.
no.
Anyway, it's sport, and there was a team there, and basically one year they got the guys to open up and be vulnerable and share stuff with each other. And it was kind of, I think in sport it's probably being done a lot more now, but this, whatever they were doing, they got the guys to kind of bond in that way, and they ended up winning the whole thing. And they were the only team that was sort of working at that level. And I always found that fascinating because I just think it said something. They hadn't performed very well in previous years, and all of a sudden they took out the whole thing. And it seems
Awesome.
counterintuitive because it's such a physical sport, but they all dropped their guards with each other, and that bonded them. I think there's something to be said for that.
I completely agree, and actually, could be a good segue if you wouldn't mind me talking about a men's group that I co-lead with a colleague of mine, JC Glick, a former Army Ranger. It's called Resilience 2.0. And if it's okay, I can just speak to that because it speaks to really well what you just shared. So our basic intention is like 1.0 in the masculine space, like Jocko Willemick waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, doing heavy lifting and taking a picture of your watch, or David Goggins running 100 miles before breakfast, that kind of stuff, which is fine. A lot of people benefit from that kind of approach to life. But our basic intention is like, okay, that's cool. Men need physical capacity building and testing themselves. But we also need 2.0, which for us is like emotional resilience, mental resilience. And the way we describe it is a capacity for a man to sit in his own discomfort of whatever's happening in his human system without running to get distracted, like drugs, alcohol, porn, Netflix, work. Like humans have a wide variety of ways to distract themselves from their own experience. So like, okay, resilience is literally sitting in your own experience for long periods of time and allowing it to emerge because there's information there useful to you. And it's also like, how do I sit with my partner? You have a wife and she's messy, emotionally messy space. And it's like, okay, how do I sit in that and hold the space for her without trying to fix her because I'm uncomfortable? I don't like her being messy, so I need to feel more comfortable, so I need to fix her. Like, no, how do I hold the space for her to have her own experience without trying to change her unless she's seeking counsel or advice or support? You have to clarify that. And the same thing is like in our communities. We live in a VUCA world. It's getting a little bit crazier, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous. Lots of changes going on. And it's like if you're called forth to be a leader in your community, at work or your neighborhood or nation state or whatever it is, do you have the capacity to do that? Are you able to find your center? I mean, it goes back to the martial arts, like everything we've been talking about, right? Can you find your kokoro or your indomitable spirit, that place inside you that's the center of the cyclone, that so you can operate from a loving, caring, compassionate, heartfelt space thoughtfully, and not be so worked up. So like we want to create more men like that because I think our world needs more men like that, and women too. But we happen to be a men's group, so we're limited to men.
Sitting in the discomfort, it's a massive one. I think I alluded to it earlier, those periods of kind of intense growth. I was drumming. It's what brought me to Europe, and I had a few moments on stage in London where things went wrong.
Ooh.
But it was like theater, it was in those moments where things went wrong in a kind of intensified environment with an audience and so on. It was like sort of sink or swim. But I found, trying to center yourself in that discomfort was extraordinarily difficult, but there was a massive amount of growth that came from very short, intense moments.
Right. So all your martial art training came useful to you at
Yeah,
that
just
very moment.
always, but I think it's what we're
Yeah,
saying. It'll always go back to that, like the centering of yourself in discomfort, whether they're conflicts with other people or
yeah,
juggling your partner or whatever it may be, finding that center so that you can be in a less reactive state, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And I told this to the guys. My ultimate goal for them is freedom.
Mm.
So they're responsive by taking their choice. They're not reactive by programming from their past. And then they can choose what they want to choose. And my hope for them is they play around, they experiment, they try new things, see what works, and they operate with maximum impact for themselves and the people around them in a positive way, socially positive way. On occasion maybe you need to be socially negative because it's a growth thing for you. Cool, I get that. But yeah, how can I help them show up more powerfully and have an impact on the world around them?
I mean, it's really fascinating. You've described yourself as a nomad, but what's your definition of what's your personal freedom to you?
So, and I'll speak to the nomadic thing. I've been nomadic for about a year and a quarter. I'm stable here for a little while in Austin, Texas. But I've been traveling up to this point. I'll be probably traveling again once I leave here. Um, and there's many things that I've learned, but the freedom from one of the many things, the freedom for me is stuff. I started traveling with about 130 pounds worth of gear, like all my stuff, and including weight vests because I ruck all the time. And after like a couple months of that, I'm like, this is insane. I'm getting a workout just going from the airplane luggage place to Uber. It's exhausting. And so like that took me months. I'm a slow learner, but I'm like, okay, I need less and less and less and less stuff. And that's been really freeing, psychologically freeing. Like, wow, I really don't need too much to
Mm.
be content and to be happy. So that's been really, really good. That's one kind of internal freedom that I've recognized from this travel.
Just yeah, getting it down to the essentials. I think having
Yeah.
moved multiple countries, I can relate to that. Like I've gone through this process of just stripping away and away and away. And then it's funny, every time I left Australia, I put a bunch of sort of shit in the roof. And I thought it was so like, it was a tussle. Like, what should I put in the roof? What should I take? But then as soon as I'm not in that country anymore, I don't think about the stuff. And when I go home again after a period of time, I look at the stuff and I'm like, I didn't even know I had that or I haven't missed it. But also when I came to Europe, same as you, I remember being on a scooter in Croatia and I had this bag full of stuff and I was sweating like absolute buckets and I couldn't get the little motorbike up the hill just because I had all this stuff that I tried
Stuff.
to
Yeah.
and but anyway, I've just gone through a similar process of stripping that away. What do I need to be creative? That's really important to me, like the bare essentials. So that but yeah, this I think we do just want to feel free, if we feel trapped in any way, I don't know how if that's good and how it manifests. But that's why the nomad thing is fascinating because it's not just moving place to place. Freedom is something else, perhaps.
Completely agree because I could do the same thing as stationary. Like I can play around with where I'm contracted and unfree and utilize things around me to test myself and see where those unfreedoms are that I want to work through. And I'd say a second thing that's been really helpful for me is on the freedom side is my year and a quarter of travel. I've been staying with friends, and for whatever reason, all my friends are either coaches, therapists, or healers, like literally to a
Wow.
person, you know. And they challenge the f out of me.
Mm.
Like there's not a like literally just happened 2 days ago. I was talking to a friend and like it just happens. Like they just and I 99% of the time I appreciate that because it shows actually 99%, 1% like going, can I have a break? But 99% I'm
Yeah.
like, this is cool. And the reason it's so cool is because they point out things to me where I'm unfree, if you want to use the unfree, or I'm contracted, I'm thinking really small, my mindset's not the greatest, whatever it is. And they just like, here's a mirror, Mike, come on, eat your own dog food. And I love that because it's an opportunity for more growth and then intimacy with this particular person because I can, share with them what I'm feeling or thinking. And they're obviously comfortable enough to share with me my own limitations, which is a nice thing. I
Yeah,
think in
that's awesome.
relationships.
It's cliche, but we are who we surround ourselves with. And when
Yeah.
they keep
Yeah.
when they keep you on your toes like that, it's just awesome. And when it's from a like, they just want the best for you, you know, like it's the thing. I just want the best for my mates. I just want to. There's no competition. It's like I just want to see them achieve. But a lot of people struggle to get to. We sort of hold mirrors to each other, and it can. What you're doing might confront somebody because of their lack of trying. But it sounds like you're surrounding yourself with high. Do you think that your type of personality, like performance coaches and stuff, do you think they attract, like they gather?
Like around me.
Yeah. Or
Well, so I'll share with you a funny story. So I put together what I call Team Fudoshin. Fudoshin, Japanese term for the martial arts. It's actually a fascinating story of what Fudoshin means. But think about it like in, the stillness of the heart or the mind, unmovable, like what pretty much everything we've just been talking about. Okay. And we just did a 50-mile go ruck in DC last month. And we're training up for another. We're going to do the rim to rim of the Grand Canyon. And then I think the thing after that, we're going to do a kayaking 18.6-mile kayaking trip around Hawaii. So like, this group of really cool people across the US, they're not all here in Austin. We train, we stay in contact, we support one another, we show up for an event, we train for the next, it's a great, cool team thing. And to your point, here in Austin, for some reason, I've been attracting really cool guys, mostly guys, who are training with me for rucks on Saturdays. We get together every Saturday and we do like the longest ruck we did was a 30-mile ruck. Now we're just doing 10 because we're not training for a ruck anymore, just for healthy reasons and camaraderie in the team. But these guys are like, the oldest is 31, the youngest is like 21, and I could be their father. Like I'm in my 50s, and there are moments like going, this is so interesting for me because I'm attracting all these young studs, like they're military or they're amazing athletes, professional athletes, like, and they're just like we all hang out, and it's inspiring for me. It's inspiring for me to hang out with these young studs because it's just like, wow, I got to keep up with them. It's fun, it's exciting. But what's been really interesting for me is the reflections I've got back from some of them call me their mentor, like literally a father-like figure. So there is something like, I think to your point of kind of attracting people. And it's kind of interesting for me to play the role of mentor because I've had mentors and I love having my mentors. And it's like a responsibility that I take really seriously. How do I show up and how can I support these people in my life as a mentor, as a friend, as a colleague, as a father figure, whatever happens to be.
yeah, man, mentors are so important. Good teachers are hard to find. That's why I always go back to the martial arts because I just had such a amazing mentor and teacher and friend that allows for that. But I guess with what you're doing, would you say there's a kind of primal aspect to it as well, like the kind of hunt and gather, sit around the fire, tell stories?
Definitely so. I'm a friend and a big fan of like Erwan LaCour from MoveNat, the whole MoveNat system. And I've been involved in the paleo primal world for a long time, and I'm friendly with a lot of those people. And actually, for part of my coaching program, I use the primal paleo model as a teaching method for clients. And part of it is like how 24-hour day-night cycle. Part of it is like what you should eat for optimization of your health and well-being and sleep, and all the things that you normally think about. But to your point, it's like we evolve in tribes. And now we're very agenic. Like you might have a spouse, you might have kids, you might have a buddy, but like men need men, you know. And these young guys that I'm spending time with every Saturday when we go our ruck, all of them to a person say like, man, I really need this. Like I need a tribe of men that I can come to and have fun. Like we have fun, we goof around, we're silly. We also have really serious conversations about life, romance, parents, all this stuff. And it's not around a fire because we're running around a lake, but it's similar things. Like, yeah, similar things. We need tribes.
Yeah, and we almost need to like roll around a bit, and it's
Yeah.
roll around in the grass. But so with everything you're doing and your lifestyle, are you fairly spontaneous, or do you have like non-negotiables in your kind of day?
Man, you're like either intuitive or psychic or something. So I've been literally playing around with that in the last part of my explorations, the last 48 hours on the martial art things that I shared with you is also explorations of this. So when I train up for the go ruck, the 50-mile go ruck, I woke up at 5 o'clock every morning. I train for a couple hours. I have my meditation practice like non-negotiable. This is what I do every day. And then I'd work, and then I had these practices that I do at night. They're more meditative, guided imagery type practices too. And that was nonstop for months and months and months and months and months. And since I've finished with the Go Rock, and I'm now starting to prepare for the next adventure, which is the Rim to Rim, I'm re-engaging those disciplines. Okay, I need to get up. I need to do this training. Here's my diet, my nutrition, my integrated training. It's not just physical training, but like training the mind and the heart, all those things. But I also recognize, and I also recognize too, like I need a little bit more fun and adventure and spontaneity. And it's weird to say this, like I'm going to build that into my calendar. I'm going to build spontaneity into my calendar, which is kind of, kind of strange, but like I'm literally building it in. Like I need time where I'm not working. I'm not doing my work for work. I'm not training. And I can just go out and maybe go in the woods and go for a hike, or go to a cafe and meet some new people, or, do whatever, like whatever the thing is that kind of I'm drawn to that moment. So I'm not like from 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. stuck. And I don't mean stuck because I chose my life, but like I have to do this from these, whatever, how many hours that is. Yeah. Okay, cool. I love the structure. I love the discipline. I love the practices, and I need a little bit of play in here. And I'll give you this is going to sound maybe kind of silly, but I did a ruck last Saturday around Lady Bird Lake here in Austin, Texas. It's a beautiful lake. And literally for the first time, I didn't have anything to go do. Because usually I'm like, okay, I need to go do whatever I'm going to go do. And I'm like, I'm just going to sit. I took my backpack off. I sat at the park, and I literally sat there for an hour and a half. And I just made new friends. Like I just started talking to people and having a great conversation, and like literally for an hour and a half. And it was probably one of the nicest days I've had in a long time. And that was spontaneous.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome.
It was kind of fun. Yeah.
But what you're saying about reining it in makes sense. Like it's spontaneity, but you actually got to like perhaps devote a block of time to it because and I know that like as a creative, my time used to blur, and especially with a son, like I realized that my son couldn't really figure out when I was working and when I wasn't, and then sort of on the weekend I'd go off and do something, and then it was a little bit unfair on time with him because he was sort of like, when's dad working, when's he not? And when I started to rein that in and be much more clear about the blocks of time, it also freed me up to be fully devoted to that like time with him, or that spontaneous
nice.
block. But you're right, it sounds a bit like rigid or whatever because we're talking about spontaneity, but it actually working it in because then also when you're in that time, you're not beating yourself up thinking you should be doing something else. And you can actually enjoy it. You could potentially enjoy that block of time more. And then when you're in that kind of free state, things happen. Like you say, you start meeting people around you and stuff. We're at this, they love saunas here in Germany, so I've probably smashed more saunas than I should. But we're all in the sauna the other day, and I was chatting to a mate just about some nutrition stuff, and then other people started chiming in, and it's it's pretty awesome when you get, because you realize everybody's just especially at a gym, everyone's having like the same sort of struggles, and right. But it's like you say, sitting in the park again, it's like community and connection and a lot of that stuff that's kind of missing at the moment.
And I love like sitting in a sauna and engaging in a conversation with your buddies and new people. That's kind of perfect. Because I could imagine some people were like, "Oh, I'm introverted. I don't want to talk to people I don't know. I'm whatever the attraction is against engaging someone." But shit, you're stuck together in a hot fucking sauna.
Well, there's a couple of like, on the Japanese thing. Apparently, the Japanese do their business deals in saunas sometimes because if it's like if we're going to go on this business venture together, we're fully exposed.
Oh, I love that. Like,
yeah, I've heard. I don't know how accurate or where I read it, but it's like if we do the deal in the sauna, we got nothing to hide here if we're going to go on to this thing. And the other thing is, if you're in a hot one, you are suffering. You're in that. You're like suffering, and then it's pretty fascinating. But have you been over? Have you spent much time in Europe through your work, or?
So I was in Europe. I've been to that's where I've been. Germany. I've been to Spain. I've been to Italy, been to the UK, been to Ireland, a couple times to Ireland, Iceland, France.
Cool. Yeah.
Croatia. actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just yeah, I've just living in a foreign country has also had a lot of kind of self growth in it as well in terms of English not being the first language. Just the act of living in a completely different culture is always very informative in so many ways.
Yeah. What would you say is like one of the biggest lessons you learned in terms of your own growth, having moved to Germany?
Humility,
Okay. Okay.
humility when you're 30, when I first came here 10 years ago, sort of mid 30s, and can't order a loaf of bread. It's like, wow, am I really gonna like commit to learning this language all over again when just being in situations where you're struggling to articulate yourself, because I just remember the progress. I was sitting at a wedding, and at a wedding, everyone's sitting around telling jokes or stories. And the thing with the German is, by the time you construct it in your brain, the moment's long gone. So I
Okay.
was forever chasing my tail. But I had one wedding where I actually managed to tell a story in German and got a laugh. But that was big. That was big progress, because I was like,
That's awesome, man.
the challenge is I'll never be able to express my character in German, right? And that's fine. Like I just can't. It's very hard for me to express my true character. I couldn't have a conversation like this in German, right? It'd
Okay.
be very, 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 very different. Yeah. So I guess a lot of humility, a lot of exposure to different ways of thought, different ways of doing things. Pros and cons to everywhere, nowhere's
Yeah. Yeah.
nowhere's perfect, but there's always an adjustment when you go home as well, because
Mm.
home sort of stays the same, and I'm somewhere in between. I'm somewhere in kind of limbo land.
I love to share a story of similar. Like
Please.
I spent a month in Ecuador right before I came here to Austin, Texas, and I'm a little. Fortunately, the tech is a little bit ahead of when you were 10 years ago because I could use Google Translate.
True.
Yeah, because I was like, "Yo hablo español, me muy poquito," and I try to talk, and she's really fast. At a cafe, I'm like, "Oh my god, I don't know what the hell I'm ordering." So I use Google Translate, and she used Google Translate, and it was a fun conversation. And I went there every day, and after a while, I stopped using it. She knew my order. But one experience I had, I think was fascinating, and this is the first time I went to Ecuador in the early 2000s. I was in a small little town, and I needed a cab to go wherever I was going to go. And the cab driver was sitting with some friends at a cafe. And in my best Spanish, I asked, "Hey, I need a cab." He goes, "Yeah, sure. Let me just finish my lunch." And I'm used to America. Like if you went to a cabbie and he's finishing his lunch, he'd finish his lunch and pick you up and take you. Like he probably wouldn't even finish his lunch; he'd just drive you.
Yeah.
In Ecuador, it's a completely different mindset. He's like literally going to finish his lunch, which is like an hour long lunch. So he
Mm.
sat there enjoying his time with his friends. And as a human, I'm thinking, God, this is brilliant. I love the fact that his values are such that he like it's important for him to spend
Mm.
time with his friends and have lunch. As an American, I'm going, oh my God, why isn't he picking me up and driving me where I need to go right now? So it's just interesting to notice like the conflict inside of me of not having it my way, the way I'm used to it here in the States.
Yeah. See,
It was, yeah,
that's a little one, but it's massive, because he like
yeah,
slowed you down, and you had no choice but
yeah,
to just wait and be
yeah.
patient. They do have a thing here like that as well, where they're very focused on finishing what's in front of them, which can affect like customer service, because if they're cleaning a table and you're waiting or something, they will finish doing the cleaning before they get to
Okay,
you. Whereas in
interesting.
Australia, it's all cut, like the person would run over, and
Yeah.
but yeah, so perhaps a similar thing, but yeah, that's classic. It's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of challenge, and I mean, it
Oh,
could be relative to any of the themes we sort of discussed, or it could be something that's helped you personally. Just is there anything that springs to mind that you do in everyday life, or that you've perhaps tried and worked, or even for somebody who might just be struggling?
yeah. Um, so one challenge that comes to mind are crucial conversations. Most of us, if not all of us, have people in our lives that we wish we could have a particular type of conversation with, but for various reasons out of insecurities and fears and past experiences, we do not have that conversation. And it could be with a spouse, it could be with a parent, a child, a good, dear friend, whomever it happens to be. And my suggestion as a challenge is like, take that seriously. Like, I would love for you to see more intimacy in yourself in this relationship. And that requires you to be honest. And that requires you to work through the things that keep you from being honest. And when I say honest, I don't mean like you're lying, but you're withholding. There's things that you're not willing to share out of fear. So like, whether you need a coach or a therapist or just a dear friend, I would suggest being really clear. Like, you can journal about what you'd love to say if the other person had been. Imagine like the other person is completely open to what you need to share. So there's not going to be judgment. There's not going to be criticism. That might not be true, but like, so act as if it is, and literally write them the letter. Or if you want to do in front of a computer and do a video or an audio, like just speak to them. However whatever you feel is most best for you to express yourself auditorily or visually or in writing, and literally do that. And while you're doing that, notice inside of yourself where the contractions are, where the fears pop up, where the insecurities pop up. And it could be in the breath, literally I'm holding my breath. It could be something going on in my belly area. Okay. There could be you hear something in your own mind's eye, like a language, being a very particular language. It could be a person that you hear, it could be your own voice, it could be a particular volume, it could be imagery you see, whatever it happens to be. But there's usually this whole gestalt we have of how we don't do what we would like to do out of fear. And the more you become aware of that, the better, because not only do you do the practice of writing the letter or doing the audio or the video, but as you become aware of the contractions in your system that keep you from doing it, then you can go to a therapist or a coach or on your own, depending on how good you are at your own kind of self work, and work through those things. Oh, there's a contraction in my breath. That's interesting. Let me sit with that. What's that about? Why is there fear showing up in my breath? Or like there's some tightness in my jaw or my around my ears and my jaw area. What am I afraid to share? Like, why is my body not wanting to express itself verbally? All that's really valuable information. So my point in all this is like, hey, first, I would suggest you choose an easier one, not the biggest crucial conversation ever, but maybe a smaller one so you can practice all the things I just walked through. Become aware of like why you might not want to do the actual conversation, and use that as information to kind of deconstruct those patterns in your system. And most likely work with someone, a good friend, a therapist, or coach, whomever. And I'd say that's an amazing crucible, because the less fear you have, or at least as long as you don't operate from that fear, the more authenticity and more honesty you have, the deeper the relationships can be and will be down the road. And I also recognize that some people don't receive well other people's truths, and it can cause challenges in the relationship. That's also valuable information. It tells you the capacity of this other person to be with you, who you really are. Okay, not to say you shouldn't or should be with them. That's a whole other conversation, but valuable information on the reality of the relationship. How's that for a interpersonal crucible?
That's massive. There's real potential. What I love about that is there's real potential to move the needle, like in the relationship. Like, yeah, it's huge. And the body, like you say, the body says so much. It really says so much. And it, like, there's no denying that therapy is really important.
Yeah.
But yeah, often the intellectualizing of things doesn't take into account so much of the body, and it's through this as you say, monitoring why can't you say that word, or how does it feel? It speaks volumes.
I completely agree, and I make, with my client work, I make a distinction between why and how. Like, why we do what we do is interesting. We can track it back to our family of origin, our mother, our father, our coach, a teacher, whatever, sister, brother. That's interesting, but just because you know why something emerges in your system doesn't change the fact that it's still in your system. On a rare occasion, you might have an aha and it shifts, but it's like how you do what you do is really the important thing. And it's not just a mental construct. It's not just a cognitive thing. As it says, like how we do what we do is embodied. It's in our breath. It's in our posture. It's in our muscle tone. It's in our visual system, our auditory system. Like, it's all of us. So I think it's really important to work with all of us, not just our cognition, as you just pointed out.
And again, it ties in nicely to the like leaning into the discomfort thing, because earlier on you were saying sit in the discomfort. This is also sit in the discomfort, but then express something to somebody. And yeah, I just know whenever I've lent into the fear of something in an honest way, it always seems to have benefit. And like you say, if the other person is struggling to take that, that says something in itself. So it's very revealing.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, very cool. Yeah,
That's a great
very
question.
cool.
I loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Where can people find you?
So my website's Michael D as in David, just letter D, Ostrolenk, OSTROLENK.com. I'm on Instagram on M Ostrolenk, OSTROLENK. I'm also on Twitter, same. LinkedIn under my full name, Michael David Ostrolenk, and Facebook too. So those are definitely ways to get hold of me. And I probably spend way too much time on Instagram, but that's also like I post there every day. So
Yeah.
you'll definitely find my thinking around various topics on Instagram.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, I sort of feel like we're just getting started, but we've covered a lot. And it's very cool to hear the birds there as well.
Thanks. Yeah.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to share for anybody who might be struggling or just generally?
Yeah, a piece of a suggestion, a random act of kindness is kind of the frame. One never knows how one might affect someone else's life by just being kind, like literally opening the door or buying them a cup of coffee, helping them carry their groceries, having an intimate conversation with a stranger. And I say that as important as it is, I've heard stories of someone literally on their way to commit suicide. And a random act of kindness from a stranger literally shifted their whole world and gave them an opportunity to think like, wow, maybe living is worthwhile. So, and not to say that everyone, like, you just don't know what's going on in anyone's heart or soul or mind, but like kindness can go a long way. Literally, as I just said, it can save someone's life. So take some deep breaths, relax, look around you and see who might need some support even for 2 minutes.
Thanks for tuning in. If you have a guest suggestion, please reach out on my website at danthomas.net. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.